Hello everyone, my name is Sini Ayala and today I will be talking about task interdependence and interpersonal conflict. Now, what is task interdependence? Well, the book describes task interdependence as the degree to which an individual's task performance depends on the efforts or skills of others. So an example of this would be, let's say you and I work at an office and I need to turn in a couple of documents to the manager or to the person that is in charge. And before I can turn those documents in, I would need your signatures. And as soon as you sign all the documents, you complete your task, and I can also complete mine because I can now turn in those documents to the manager. Now, of course, there are some cases in which a person doesn't complete their own task, and that can lead to conflict in the workforce. Conflict is described as the behavior by a person or group intended to inhibit the attainment of goals by another person or group. Now, in the workforce, you can see two different kinds of conflict. A lot of the conflict that you can see is usually interindividual conflict, and that's conflict between two people, usually in the same organization. And since we're using the document example, since you didn't sign the documents, you and I would be having conflict because you inhibited me by completing my task or my goal, which was to turn in the documents to the manager. And in some cases, you can also see intra-group conflict, and that's conflict between one person or a faction within group members. And we're going to be focusing on interindividual conflict instead of intra-group conflict. Now, here is the problem. So I work for an organization called Jumpstart. You can find this in a lot of other schools, but what this organization does is that it dedicates itself to help underserved preschools improve literacy and social emotional development in preschoolers. In UCI alone, there are around 100 members that are divided into small groups. The groups usually range from 5 to 8 members, and in the group I'm in, I have a bit of inter-individual conflict with a specific individual. And this is the reason why it's inter-individual conflict and why we're focusing on it in this presentation. It's inter-individual conflict because none of the other members in the group that we're in have participated in the conflict that's going on. So it's just between this person and I. And what really started the problem was a couple of weeks ago, they were assigned to do 24 chameleons. And the reason why this person had to do 24 chameleons was because the chameleons were going to go to the art center. And I was in charge of the art center for that week. And unfortunately, she only did 4 chameleons, and the art center is really like a place a lot of the children like to go. So you can see why there would be conflict. But thankfully, even with the 4 chameleons, I was able to resolve the problem because what I decided to do in the end was that we would use the chameleons as kind of a stencil outline, and the kids would just, stencil the chameleon, and then once they drew the pattern, or once they stenciled the chameleon, they would just draw patterns and sign, and it was really good. I don't think it was I didn't find it fun because we wanted the kids to take the chameleons home and show it to the parents, and especially in an organization like Jumpstart, where a lot of the materials require team effort, there could be some conflict within the group. And yeah. So there has been research about this. In a meta-analysis, a group of researchers gathered information about why interindividual and intra-group discontinuity occurs. And what they found was that what they were trying to measure was how a participant interacted with behaviors that were considered unrestrained or restrained, how a group makes a decision, if there were any communication problems within the group or within an individual, and if there was any conflict of interest. So the results that the researchers found was that there are two reasons for interindividual and intergroup conflict to occur, and they would be greed and fear. Greed occurs because a member does a selfish acts to get competence, and this decreases social support in the group, thus causing intragroup or interindividual conflict. And fear because what a member of a group feared the most was that there weren't a lot of resources for the whole group. And because of this fear of less resources, this causes the groups to become more distant and to distrust each other because they're all competing for the same resources. And what the researchers concluded was that if there was more resources, there's less greed, and if there's less greed and less fear, there's also less interindividual and intergroup conflict. And here are the solutions for the problem this person and I have. And the solutions would be to use "I feel this when you do that" statements. What the book recommends was to avoid the conflict, and because I try not to do any more team efforts or tasks that require working with this person, and that's what the book recommends, just to avoid the conflict. And surprisingly enough, what the meta-analysis suggested was to increase cooperation between this person and I. Fortunately or unfortunately, and her name's not Stacy, by the way. It's not a pseudonym, but it's just it's a pseudonym for this person, like Jane or John Doe. But fortunately or unfortunately, the year is almost over. I probably won't be next year. I probably won't be in the same group as her, and I guess I'm going with the second option. Just to avoid the conflict entirely. And that is it, everyone. Thank you so much for seeing this presentation. I hope you all have a wonderful, everything. And good luck on finals.